evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson Tonight. You can be forgiven if the events of the last month caught you by surprise, you didn't expect them. You become used to dismissing the American left out of hand as a joke, because they are. Since the day Donald Trump was inaugurated, the Democratic Party has been helplessly disorganized and totally ineffective as a political party. They wasted years chasing invisible Russian agents and then making weird and unintelligible sounds about something called Ukraine. It's still not clear what they meant by that. Their entire political strategy was bizarre, and in the end it was counterproductive. It hurt them with voters. They went down in the polls. Only buffoons do that in politics. These people couldn't organize your kid's birthday party. They didn't make their beds this morning. And yet suddenly, out of nowhere, they roared back and took over the country. They did it in less time than it takes most people to go on spring vacation. What happened? How'd they do that? Well, it's simple. Nobody stopped them. There was no opposition to their power grab. The other side surrendered on day one without a fight. The rest of us watched all of this with our jaws hanging open in shock. It was the opposite of what we expected. Millions of people regularly vote for the Republican Party precisely because they would like someone to protect this country from the crazed ideologues who seek to destroy it. There are many of them. We're watching them on television now. There's not really another reason to vote Republican, unless you happen to be one of those rare people who wants more pointless foreign wars and enjoys sucking up to banks. Most people don't. You vote for Republicans to protect you from this. But when the moment of crisis came, Republicans ran away. Major American cities were looted and burned on television. Citizens were beaten and murdered. Works of public art were destroyed by the score. America's history, those shared experiences that bind us together as a nation, was plundered and completely rewritten by illiterate vandals. Everywhere as they watched, Americans were afraid. Afraid not simply for their safety, but afraid for their jobs, their reputations, afraid for their families. Many Americans were fired abruptly in the middle of a severe recession, doomed to ruin for nothing. For saying the wrong thing, looking the wrong way, liking the wrong tweet. That happened. It's happening now. Some of the accused were so terrified they denounced their own families, wife, brother, daughter. In the end, they were destroyed anyway, because that's what happens in purges. You're destroyed anyway. Most Americans assume they would never live to see a moment like this, but they have. It's still going on. And the question that hangs in the air is, where are our protectors? At the height of the riots, the president of the Heritage Foundation, that's the nation's single largest conservative think tank, it has consumed billions of donor dollars. The president of Heritage wrote an op-ed accusing America of being irredeemably racist. Her name is Kay Cole James. You probably have sent her money. As America burned, Kay Cole James, president of the Heritage Foundation, piled on. And she wasn't alone in that. So many on the right did exactly the same thing. Meanwhile, they did nothing. They didn't lift a finger to help the people they had promised, they had pledged to protect, their voters and their donors. Instead, they did everything possible to accommodate the demands of the people tormenting them, the rioters, and the people who backed the rioters. Congressional Republicans decided to make reining in law enforcement their top legislative priority. They blamed the cops. They didn't blame the rioters, they blamed the cops. Then Republicans bragged about springing more criminals from jail. The last thing we needed. In the state of Iowa, the Republican governor announced that she was giving felons the vote by executive order, not even waiting for the election, just doing it, signing it. Meanwhile, almost everywhere, ordinary Americans came under attack for the color of their skin. Acts of actual racism, where people were being hurt for their race, something they can't control, something they were born with. And yet no Republicans rose to defend them. Republicans refused even to defend the principle of equality under the law, the foundation of this country, the most important thing we have. Not defended. Really, in the end, the only people who gained anything in the revolution were the ones waging it. Our leaders, very much including our Republican leaders, shamefully, were focused on meeting their demands. So what should we conclude from what we just saw? The message, unfortunately, could not be clearer. Voting is for fools. You vote, you put these people into office with your votes, and in return they patronize you. And when it matters, they abandon you. They have contempt for you. You know they do. You can smell it. It's obvious. Voting doesn't work. But when you riot, and you burn things and you hurt people, you get a very different response. When you do those things, our leaders snap to attention. They tiptoe around your feelings, as Republicans are. They give you what you want, as Republicans are. Rioting works. That's the message they're sending. Think about that. It's the most dangerous possible message you can send because it guarantees more violence. You've got to wonder how all of this would have played out if Barack Obama was still president. Let's say it was the summer of 2011, right before Obama's re-election campaign started in earnest. Imagine if at that politically critical moment, violent mobs of Mitt Romney supporters began looting and burning major American cities, screaming racist slogans as they did it. Hard to imagine, but try. Imagine if the Romney mob then defaced and tore down statues of Martin Luther King in public parks. Imagine if every street sign in America identifying a Martin Luther King boulevard was suddenly ripped to the ground and defaced with graffiti. Most Americans would find that appalling and disgusting. We certainly would. But let's say the mob kept doing it because nobody stopped them. Imagine if the people who planned to vote for Barack Obama in the fall knew they couldn't admit that in public. If citizens wearing Obama hats were physically assaulted, punched in the face, thrown to the sidewalk, and kicked. Imagine if anyone who spoke out against the mobs or showed support for Obama's campaign was censored or deplatformed by tech monopolies that operated at the pleasure of federal regulators. Imagine if those same monopolies censored President Obama himself. So ask yourself sincerely, if all of that happened, how do you think Barack Obama would have responded? By tweeting angry things? By effectively apologizing to the mob, meeting their demands for, quote, reform, and then declaring a new national holiday at their request? No, probably not. It's hard to imagine Barack Obama doing that. It's hard to imagine him complaining that as president of the United States, he didn't have the power to stop political violence, or preserve the integrity of an election, or protect free speech, or public art, or the nation's history itself. No, that would not happen. Instead, within about 10 minutes, you would see the Obama Justice Department indict every single person involved on federal conspiracy and civil rights charges. You would watch as SEAL Team 6 reclaimed downtown Seattle. You'd see airborne units drop from the sky into Atlanta, Minneapolis, and Portland. You would see whatever it took to stop the chaos. That revolution would not last long. Say what you will about Barack Obama, and we do, but he never doubted he had the constitutional authority to act, and he did act. Obama knew a threat when he saw one. Our Republican leaders don't believe they have the authority. They don't believe they're legitimate. They don't see the threat. They don't want to see the threat because they know they can't face the mob. They know they're too weak. And so they offer trinkets and hope the mob will go away, but it won't. Mobs can't be sated. We thought Republicans understood that. That's why we supported them. But crisis has revealed the truth. Now we know who they are. It could not be clearer, and now it's time to find new leaders. Ned Ryan is the founder and CEO of American Majority and author of the book Restoring Our Republic. He joins us tonight. Ned, I gotta say, it physically pained me to write those paragraphs about Barack Obama. I only did because I think it's true. I think Obama was the worst president in American history. But I can't imagine how the Republican Party can reward rioting, which is what they are doing. The Democrats, needless to say, inspired the rioting. I'm not letting them off the hook, but the Republican Party should be defending us, isn't rewarding it. What are we watching?
We're watching the fact that it's really becoming clear that the base, the priorities of the base and the Constitution really aren't the priority of a Republican leaders or conservative Inc. I tell people actions authenticate a belief system, and think about it. You've got Black Lives Matter. They're avowed Marxists. They want to destroy capitalism. They want to destroy the Western nuclear family. For them, politics is a religion. They want to perfect humanity through their belief system, through politics, and they are validating their beliefs by their current actions right now. Republicans and conservatives go to D.C. because they want to have a good career and get a check. And I tell people that what you're seeing right now is you cannot defeat basically religious zealots hell-bent on the destruction of the American Republic with a bunch of careerists looking for the next paycheck. And to make my point even further, Tucker, the actions of Mitch McConnell, of Kay James, validate my point. They slander us, they sell us out, and they're doing it because they seek money and power. If you don't believe me, think about the process and how this works. Republicans seek to raise money from their corporate cronies to get reelected, to make them happy. They do all kinds of policy issues to get the next reelection check. Heritage raises money to get the next building, to get the next marble bathroom. And you realize what they're doing is building even more sinecures for ineffective people. The whole point for them was money and power, not to advance the base and not to advance our priorities.
It leaves the rest of us in a very tough spot because obviously you're not going to support what we're watching on television, which really is a political action sponsored by the Democratic Party. Let's not lie about it. This is an election strategy. It's political violence, and the Democrats are behind it. So you're not going to vote for that. So the Republicans are ineffective because they know they can be, because if you're a normal person, you have no choice.
Well, that's the point. They've been blackmailing us. I mean, it really does feel like blackmail. What are you going to do? Vote for them? Well, you have to vote for us, and you have to actually fall in line with us. Of course, we're going to sell you out. We're going to abuse you. We're going to slander you. But this is the whole point why Donald Trump was elected, Tucker. He was elected as an outsider to come represent the American people, to represent Americanism, not republicanism, not corporatism. And we elected him to punch back, to counterpunch, to punch even harder. And I would tell him, you were elected for a reason. You were elected as a reaction to what we're seeing playing out. Don't hold your punches. Don't listen to those voices that are telling you to moderate your views. Punch even harder, because I'm convinced, Tucker, nothing less than the American Republic is at stake. This is a tipping point for us, and the fight is very real. If we don't win this fall, I don't know what the future looks like for us.
I think a lot of people feel that way. Ned Ryan, thanks so much for your honesty. I appreciate that.
Thanks, Tucker.
So as we've said many times, because it's the truest thing we've ever said, if you want more riots and more violence, then reward them, as our leaders are. In Portland, Oregon last night, rioters wrapped an American flag around a George Washington statue, then lit the flag on fire and pulled the statue to the ground. They destroyed it. George Washington, the founder of the country. Today, officials in Portland announced that the statue, which has stood there for nearly a century, will not go back up. In Seattle, Antifa demonstrators drove the police from a precinct building and created their own autonomous area. Consequences so far? Zero. Jason Rance has been tracking developments in downtown Seattle for us. He's been our CHOP correspondent all week. We're happy to have him back on tonight. Jason, what's the latest?
The latest is the mood on the ground has changed considerably. It does seem like it's gotten a lot more dangerous since this new leadership started to take hold, and a woman who has spoken up saying that they will have their demands met by any means necessary. We had, in the last 24 hours or so, a man with a machete wandering around Cal Anderson Park, which, by the way, is now restricted between the time of 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. to Black Seattleites only. So they will not allow anybody else on the grounds until after 8 p.m.
I'm sorry, may I pause you there? So in downtown Seattle, there is a racially segregated park. Is the city of Seattle allowing this?
The city of Seattle is allowing everything right now that's happening. Right now, this entire zone, no matter what the SPD is telling you, and the chief of police is claiming that there's no such thing as a no-cop zone. That is 100% incorrect. And the people who actually live, the people who live and pay rent in this area, they are now starting to speak up, some of them anonymously, some of them putting their name to it, because they're saying, look, what you guys don't seem to understand is after hours, things get very dangerous. There was a local security company out here, Iconic Global, that ended up finding an AK-47 and fully loaded magazines stashed in some shrubs very close to CHOP. And right now, the media is kind of getting pushed out, certainly in certain spots. In the back again of this, of the tents of Cal Anderson Park, people are being told, you can't film here, we're not allowing it, it's no longer a public park. And they're forcing people to actually erase any video or photographs that they're taking.
That's shocking. Does the city have, the most ineffective mayor in America, Jenny Durkan, a narcissist, have any plans on shutting this down before there's bloodshed?
As of right now, there are no plans that anyone is aware of. They tried to open some of the lanes for traffic, and that right now is kind of tenuous, but it's hanging out there. But unfortunately, there's no plans, that seems right now, to repopulate the East Precinct, this police station, with a number of staff members who can actually adequately police this very large neighborhood of Seattle. And again, people are getting more and more concerned with their personal safety. Some of them have said they're just moving into hotels for the time being.
Unbelievable. Be careful. Jason Rance, good to see you. Good to see you. So much bad news. Here's the good news. Sports. Sports are apolitical. They're meritocratic. We've got football coming up in the fall. Oh, but wait. Dr. Fauci, who appears to believe he's in charge of the country, says we can't have football this fall. Huh. How should we respond? Dave Portnoy joins us after the break.